Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. Welcome back to the channel. I've recently put up a poll and I asked a simple question a few weeks ago. Are we adapting or just getting used to less? And your responses really stood out to me because a lot of people are feeling something right now that's hard really to put into words. But I'm going to give it my best go here. It's really not panic. It's not crisis. It's just this constant pressure that everyone's feeling. Prices go up, bills go up, everyday things cost more than they used to, and people are noticing it, but they're not really reacting the same way anymore. You don't hear as much shock. You hear things like, well, everything's expensive nowadays. That's just how it is. And that shift in reaction is what's actually been catching my attention. I think what we're experiencing is something more like economic fatigue. It isn't panic or crisis, it's the feeling of constant pressure that never quite lets up, and over time we stop reacting to it the same way. Prices rise, wages lag behind, people adjust again. Over time, that adjustment stops feeling temporary and starts feeling permanent. Because what people are doing now isn't dramatic, it's just small adjustments that they're making. Choosing the cheaper option, putting things off, fixing things instead of replacing them, rethinking what retirement might look like, saying things like, I don't really need that. I can make do. Maybe simpler is better. And on the surface, none of those things are wrong, but this is where the question comes in. Are we adapting wisely, or are we slowly lowering our standards without even realizing what we're doing? To be honest, adapting can be a good thing. It can mean becoming more resourceful, wasting less, focusing on what actually matters, choosing a simpler life on purpose. And for a lot of people, that's not a negative shift at all because it leads to greater resilience and independence. However, when expectations begin to shift downward, people may not even notice that it's happening right away. And they begin to accept things that would have been unacceptable to them before, like maybe choosing cheaper food, postponing travel, downsizing retirement expectations, repairing things instead of replacing them, or giving up certain comforts. And over time, people start getting used to always feeling financially stretched, assuming certain things just aren't realistic anymore. And they let go of goals without really thinking about it. Not because you made a clear decision, but because over time, it just started to feel normal. And I think the difference between those two things is intention. And I think if you look closely, people tend to fall into different patterns with this. Some are choosing simpler living very intentionally. Others are adjusting little by little without really thinking about it. And then there are those who feel like they're being pushed into it, letting go of things they valued, not because they want to, but because they feel that they have to. And all three of these can exist at the same time, sometimes even within the same person. And when you bring it back to something simple, there's a difference between saying, I'm choosing to live with less, and slowly ending up in a place where I guess this is just how life is now. That shift is easy to miss because it doesn't happen all at once. When pressure becomes constant, it starts to feel normal. People adjust, and then they adjust again, and after a while, the adjustments stop feeling temporary. It just becomes life. There's actually a term that's been coming up more recently or lately when people talk about the economy, and it's called a K-shaped economy. And what that means in simple terms is that not everyone is experiencing this the same way. Some people are doing okay, even moving ahead or upward, like with the K. So, okay, I can't show it with my fingers, but anyway, with the letter K, they're moving upward, moving ahead. But others are feeling more and more pressure, especially with things like housing, food, and debt. And while you'll hear, this talked about in different countries around the world, including the US, the UK, And we're seeing it here in Canada too. But the truth is, it's not just a local story. It's really worldwide. Persistent inflation, housing costs rising faster than income, retirement uncertainty, higher everyday expenses. Unlike past economic crises, many people aren't reacting with panic. They're reacting with adaptation. So on the surface, things might look stable, but underneath, the experience can feel very different depending on where you're at. Just like the letter K, some move up and some move down, hence the K-shaped economy. And I feel it too. Like this morning, for instance, I woke up to minus 11 degrees Celsius, which is approximately 12 degrees Fahrenheit, and I had to plug in a second heater that I had just put away last week. Some things just aren't negotiable in my world. Even if it means a higher bill next month, we tell ourselves it is what it is. But I have this saying, it is what it is until it's not anymore. And I'm not about to be, freezing. So obviously a second heater needed to be plugged in. And that's the part that concerns me. When does just getting used to less cross a line and we can't uncross? Anyway, I've been looking at a report from a government-funded think tank here called Policy Horizons Canada. Their job is to look at global disruptions. After all, we're living in a global world, right? Things happen all over the world to figure out where we're all headed. They recently, I guess it was April 2024, released a study called Disruptions on the Horizon. And a few of their points really stopped me in my tracks because they mirror exactly what I'm talking about here today. They aren't just talking about prices. They're talking about a future where downward social mobility becomes the norm, where the old promise that if you work hard, you can build a better life starts to feel like it's being replaced by a reality where people literally can't afford to live on their own or even meet their basic needs. When the report uses words like plausible to describe a future where the next generation is consistently worse off than the one before, it makes you realize that our adjustments might be part of a much bigger global shift. And if we're not careful, we're normalizing a decline that isn't just temporary. We're moving towards that point where it's not anymore, where the things we value, the independence we've worked for, simply aren't within our reach. Because in that report, the government's own experts list people cannot afford to live on their own as a top likely disruption for our modern world. Imagine that. It's no longer a what if, it's something they're telling us to prepare for. And when the facts are this clear, we can't afford to just stick our heads in the sand and hope for the best. Not for ourselves and certainly not for the people that we care about. We have to face what's unfolding, even if it's uncomfortable. I will leave the link to the website and document in the pinned comment and in the description for anyone interested in reading it. It is a bit heavy, but it's quite an eye-opener. And I think that kind of constant pressure does more than just affect our finances. It changes how people think. The report calls it the internalization of stress, which means the pressure isn't just happening to you anymore, it's becoming part of you. We're internalizing it. You start second guessing small decisions, thinking about money more often than you used to. It becomes this quiet background noise in our day-to-day life. And one comment that really stayed with me was someone talking about retirement and asking, how much less can I go? And that question says a lot, because it's not about panic. It's about recalculating over and over again. And for some people, especially those living on fixed incomes, this isn't even a choice. These adjustments aren't optional, they're necessary. So when we come back to the question, are we adapting wisely or are we just lowering our standards? I don't think there's a simple answer to that question. I think a lot of people are somewhere in the middle. And there's nothing wrong with simplifying our lives, but it hits differently when it's something you choose versus something you slowly felt pushed into. I don't think the question is whether we adapt, but because we all are, really, we're all adapting. And it certainly can be healthy when it's intentional and thoughtful. But when adaptation happens under constant stress, it can start to become something else. And after a while, when the pressure doesn't go away, people start adjusting what they pay attention to. And sometimes we don't just adjust our spending, we adjust our intake. We start to wonder if the only way to find peace is to stop looking at the facts altogether. And that's not a good place to be. Is pulling back and living in a news-free bubble actually protecting our peace? Or are we just choosing to stay in the dark while the world moves on without us? That's a topic for my next discussion, whether we are protecting our minds or just avoiding reality. I hope you'll consider joining me for that one. For a lot of people, though, however, this question of adapting or getting used to less is still unfolding, not all at once, but in small ways over time. Thanks for spending some time with me today, and until next time, may God bless you.